Hi, my name is Zamila, and today I wanted to talk about my experience as somebody who is low income and also has affordable housing. So I make around $42,500 a year. I think that's kind of like what it is. I just started this job almost 3 months ago, and on March 1st, I was awarded affordable housing. I moved into affordable housing. What's considered affordable? So I pay around maybe $1,300 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Toronto. That's with utilities included. Maybe I pay around $1,350. So that's considered affordable for a one-bedroom apartment. I know you don't have to sound off in the comments. That's not affordable. I'm well aware. But that is affordable housing. That's what I won in the affordable housing lottery. This is different from community housing, which is often much cheaper but has a lot more stipulations. And so, yeah, my life has significantly changed because I have been able to receive this housing at a discount. I have been able to plan for a future that was very difficult to conceptualize outside of marrying rich before receiving this affordable housing. And it has allowed me to live in the country that I was born in and live in the city that I was born in, live downtown. I was born in downtown and was raised in downtown Toronto for the early part of my life, in a way that I probably never would have been able to do without moving into a much higher income. Before that, I was living at my dad's, sleeping on the couch, to be completely honest, because my dad, he didn't plan for us to live with him, but that was just the reality of what it had to be because life is incredibly unaffordable. Yeah, so this is not my first apartment on my own. My first time living on my own was when I went to university. My mom and my dad paid for my tuition, which was around $7,000 a year. I did not use any funding help. I don't really know how much they could actually afford that. My parents are not super transparent about finances, but my mother is a very independent person and was an immigrant in the States. We were all immigrants in the States. She never accepted any type of help, any type of welfare support. She had to work incredibly hard, and I'm not particularly aware of how much she was actually able to save because she was constantly paying for everything herself. So growing up, I thought we were middle class, but now as an adult and thinking about what my mother actually was putting money towards every month, and knowing that I don't think she was able to save, I would actually consider us low income, which feels hard to say because I come from a family that is fiercely independent and has a lot of dignity and pride around not needing support and not relying on support and not taking advantage of systems and things like that. And sometimes that ends up being correlated in my mind with not being considered of a lower class, and not utilizing any resources that are meant for people who are in a vulnerable position. But truthfully, we were in a vulnerable position. My mom simply survived and fought through, from my perspective, though I'm sure she will push back on that. She worked incredibly hard and has not been able to give herself a whole lot of cushion because of how many sacrifices she made. Yeah, so I lived in university housing. She paid for all of that. Then in my second year, I moved into an apartment with my friend. My mom paid the rent for that, which was $900 a month. I also worked a job, so she just paid my rent and I paid for everything else. My dad helped me with groceries almost all the time. The year after that, I moved into a co-op and I paid like around $500 for a semester, like $565, something like that, for a semester. It was the Neil Wyzik co-op, so you can look up the prices. For that, my mom paid. I continued to work a job. And then my last year, I moved out of that co-op housing. I moved back in with my dad. I lost my job. In between those years, I was working, usually during the summers. Sometimes, and then during the year, I had a school job, which was like around 24 hours a week. Then I quit my job. COVID obviously was happening during that time. Moved back in with my dad. Did one semester of school, which my dad might have paid for. I don't think I asked my mom because I was just starting to catch up to the reality that she has been paying for everything my entire life, pretty much after my parents' divorce or their separation, and we moved to the States. So I asked my dad, and I think he paid. I can't really remember if that was him or not. I think it was. And then I dropped out of school with one semester left, lived with my dad, moved around to go be with my mom, who was living in Mexico at the time, in Tulum. Traveled around, went back to school for a final semester, paid for that myself using OSAP, and then paying for the rest myself. And then I'd been living with my dad ever since. And I entered a state, I myself was either no income or low income in terms of my own finances, but when I was attached to my parents, I felt secure. So I felt middle class, or what I assumed to be middle class. I don't think I actually had an accurate understanding of what middle class really was. But because I knew that I was not going to go hungry, and I knew that I was not going to live on the streets, I considered that middle class. We weren't going on vacations. We weren't doing luxurious things like that. I wasn't buying a new computer every year. All of my computers that I've ever had have been basically donations. Like, they were my mom's things that she was able to get through work, and then I would get them. But I've never bought a laptop full price or ever anything like that. All of my phones have always been discounted. Nothing luxurious like that has ever occurred. Vacations are not, we never went on summer vacations and things like that. But we always had a house over our home. We always had, that we were renting. We had a house when I was young, but my parents sold it when they got separated, and then we never owned a house again. Before that house, we lived in a co-op. And after that house, we continued to rent. My dad always lived in a 1-bedroom, or I think he might have lived in a 2-bedroom for a while, but I wasn't with him. I was with my mom in the States. My mom would rent apartments and townhouses. And again, I'm not completely sure of what the financial reality was for her. I just know that she always did what she needed to do. And there were times when she experienced layoffs and wouldn't tell us until she was back on her feet again. She's an incredible woman. So yeah, within my own situation, I have always been very financially precarious. I have had precarious work. I had one salaried job, which I left after 3 months because it was a toxic work environment and I really just couldn't handle it. It was also a 2-hour commute there and a 2.5-hour-ish commute back. So, horrible commute. And yeah, I got into credit card debt at my worst. I think I had around $4,000 or $5,000 in debt, which might not seem like a lot, but when you don't have steady work, that's a lot of money to be in debt. I could never afford to pay rent on my own, so I was never moving out. I was always doing government-funded programs to move and live in different areas across Canada, or just programs and opportunities I could find to leave my dad's house, because it was 3 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment in a building that was, breaking down because it's mostly lower income people who were living there. And, we just don't really get taken care of. And then the first time I was ever able to secure rent on my own was becoming an English teacher in a foreign country. So I went to South Korea and I taught English for a year, and that was the first time I ever covered all my bills on my own through my own income. but I wasn't necessarily paying for rent because my rent was covered by my job. Coming back here after Korea, this is the first year where I am paying for rent entirely on my own, as well as all my other bills. My dad still helps me sometimes with groceries. Like today, he came and helped me and brought me groceries. He's done that maybe twice now, twice or three times now. But overall, I've been paying for all of my bills myself. So that's just like I'm no longer in credit card debt. I was able to pay that off because of my job in Korea. I have maybe like $500 in cash savings, like in a high yield savings account, and in investments, I have around $4,000. And then everything else goes to bills. I am actively trying to save more and invest more right now, but right now I would say that I live paycheck to paycheck, and I would consider myself low income. I think it would be perfectly reasonable for me to go to a food bank and try and get groceries through that means, but I don't. I have health disabilities that I think would be perfectly reasonable for me to try and seek out support for that, but I don't. And so, yeah, that is my financial picture. That is my financial reality. I am actively trying to get out of it. I do not wish to stay low income. I hope to get a higher salary and to become more independent. Yeah, those are all things I desire, but that's just the reality of what I'm working with. I just wanted to paint that picture so it's just completely transparent. Yeah, so I'm working paycheck to paycheck. And I wanted to talk about how affordable housing on its own is not the answer. And in terms of being able to provide a better quality life for people, we need to pair affordable housing with increased wages. While it is incredible to have the apartment that I have and at the price that I have it, I am still very much so living paycheck to paycheck, and I work a job that pays me by the hour and does not give me any retirement benefits. And so I am having to rely on CPP and my own retirement investments in order to make sure that I'm going to have a livelihood in my later years of life, which is a big point of stress for me. I am usually using my credit card in the weeks between when I get paid, and when I get paid, I end up putting a pretty big portion of my paycheck towards paying off my credit card bill. I'm rarely buying frivolous things. I'm usually just buying food because my groceries have run out and I don't want to go grocery shopping again because it's so expensive. And I'm buying usually fruits and vegetables that are expensive, simply because they are expensive. I'm not like buying a bunch of snacks and like extras and things like that. It's just basic food, and it just happens to be pricey, which is why today I just had to ask my dad to help me with groceries because if I did it on my own, I knew that my next paycheck would be going to paying off my credit card bill, and I wouldn't be able to put a lot towards my savings, and I'm trying to save more and be more aggressive with my paycheck, with saving it. So an increase in my wage would significantly improve my life, and I am actively seeking out work that pays more, but it is quite difficult. Right now I'm paid $22 an hour and I work 40 hours a week, and I mean, it's not enough, and I can't really imagine working minimum wage, which is like $18 an hour. Of course, it's doable. It would require you to make significant sacrifices, not just in just in quality of life, to be completely honest. I'm a young person. I'm only 25. I'm turning 26 in 2 months. And the sacrifices that I'm already trying to make, to actively make, are things that take me away from social life, things that take me away from participating in community, in opportunities to meet partners. Like I'm a young person, I'm trying to find a partner, and so I need to go out, right? And of course, there are free things that you can do, but the reality is that socializing costs a lot of money, and most people do social events that costs money. And when you're doing something for free, it's not usually as actually interactive. There's not usually as much of an opportunity to actually meet people and speak to people. It can be possible, but the reality is that it's just not really there. So a lot of social events and opportunities where you can bump into people cost money. Even just transportation is extremely expensive. It's around $150 a month, and I take the train. When I do have to take a car, it is usually because I've traveled about like an hour, 40 minutes to an hour to go see my sister who's recently given birth. So she has a baby, so I go and I see her as much as I can, and she also has 2 other children, young children, so I try to go and see them, and I'm usually there for a few hours after my job. And when I am leaving, it's late, and I'm usually taking home things that she's given me for my house so that I don't have to buy things. And so I'm carrying all of that, and so usually I don't get on the bus that leads me to get on the train. Instead, I usually take an Uber share, and that can take, sometimes I can get a really good deal and like pay $3, which is like the dream, but most times it's more like $10 to $15, which is a lot of money. And so some people would consider that frivolous spending, but usually the idea, it's the psychological, the idea of having to get on the bus and then get on the train after a really late night when I need to go home and I have work in the morning at 7 a.m., which means I'm getting up around 5:30 a.m., is it can deter me from going to see my family at all, which then stops me from being a village for my sister who's postpartum, seeing my nephews and continuing to build that relationship, just being connected with family. So these are the choices that I'm making. I have been able to will myself out of like coffee in the morning and going to Tim Hortons and things like that. I'm packing a lunch. I'm always meal prepping, but sometimes I run out of food and there's nothing left to do unless I want to eat lentil curry with nothing else, just lentils and coconut milk and tomato and curry powder and garlic, if I have any garlic left that's fresh, or just like seasonings. If I don't want to just eat that, which is essentially slop, for the rest of the week, then sometimes I'll buy myself food. So those are the purchases that I'm making that you could consider frivolous. And as you can see, they're not frivolous at all. And with these decisions that I'm making, I am still quite extremely living paycheck to paycheck. In terms of entertainment, every so often I will pay for a party. The most expensive party I paid for was $50. I do not do that often. Like, I never do that. That was a very, like, one-time kind of thing because I liked the artist that was performing. The other things that I paid for that I guess could be considered frivolous, like a movie ticket, $10, that's not very often at all. That happened once last month. I did pay $500 for my Caravana outfit. This is my first time experience ever doing this. It's a one-time purchase for the year, purchasing an outfit to be part of a Caravana band. That's my first time ever doing that. That's an experience that I really wanted for myself. I paid $300 to attend a job liberation, like networking Black women in the workplace event, 3-day event, and have access to all of the videos for a year. So those are all of like the frivolous purchases I guess I've made. And then I've gone to the dollar store and bought art supplies and bought markers that were higher quality, not from the dollar store, because dollar store markers are really bad quality. So I bought some higher quality markers that are like $20. I bought a book recently that was that's really good. That was about $20. So like these are like the purchases that I'm making. I'm just sharing them with you so that you understand what I'm spending my money on, and I guess to put into context what it's like being low income, especially when people talk to you about being more aggressive with your savings and trying to explain that you are kind of already aggressive. You're already an aggressive saver when you're low income. You're not spending on crazy things. I'm not buying shoes. I'm not buying large amounts of clothes. This year and last year were the first times in years that I was buying new clothes, and I only thrift shop, and I only buy clothes that are like under $10 each. Um, and I'm only buying clothes when I have nothing to wear, or the things that I have to wear, I've been wearing them for years, and I need something new. Then I'm buying something like that. I had to buy a shaver for my head because I wear my hair short. I bought dye because I dye my hair. But that's it. I'm buying things that are part of functioning in life. And it's not enough. I could definitely cut these things out. I have tried to do a no buy summer and a low buy summer, and I'm still going to try. But there's a certain point to which it's just simply about the fact that I'm not making enough money, and I am actively trying to pursue a higher salary, a higher wage, but it is so difficult to find a job that pays more, that will hire you, because everyone is trying to make more money. And so I also am actively pursuing entrepreneurial goals. I'm using all the skills I have. As you can see, I'm a visual artist. So I've signed up for programs, just gain skills in visual arts, to take opportunities for creating art and getting paid for that. I make videos on YouTube. I'm not super consistent, but I make videos. I do what I can. I've freelanced work with tarot, and I've tried to start different businesses. I'm doing what I can. But the reality is that I need more help as a low income person with my income. I need financial support, and whether that comes through just an increase in minimum wage up from $18 to the reality is it would be much more helpful if for minimum wage to be $25, $26. And it's framed as a big jump, but the reality is that it's very doable for a lot of these big companies. And for smaller businesses, I know that that's expensive, but there is government funding that can support those efforts, because there's so much money that is put into other areas of government. That money can be helped. That money can be given to small businesses to supplement wages. There can be grant programs that can be established, just like the Canada Summers Jobs grants and all of these things. But I need a higher wage. And it's not just on me to look for a job that pays more. It is also on my government, my Canadian government, my Ontario government, to boost minimum wage and to boost wages out of stagnation. We are not making enough to match with the lifestyle that we are expected to have as Canadians in our modern world, especially as Canadians living in big cities like Toronto. We are expected to have the lifestyle of someone who can afford $1,500 rent, but we're making wages that ask you to pay $700 rent. It doesn't make any sense. So that's just something I wanted to bring forth to the conversation about economics, just from a perspective of someone who is living the life of someone living paycheck to paycheck, who is also financially literate and doing the work to gain even more financial independence and be smart with her finances. I contribute to my investments every month. I put as much as I can in. I also am trying to build up an emergency fund. I'm paying all my bills. I pay off my credit card every month. I don't spend frivolous things on my credit card. And I'm also trying not to starve my life of any joy. And I do spend money. I have a healthy relationship with money as much as I can. I try not to move from a lack mindset. I'm doing all the things. But I need my government to match my efforts. I put myself out there for the affordable housing lottery. I won. That's awesome. I need more support beyond that. I'm not taking advantage of all of the things in the system, things I could, because if I were to try and pursue on like disability support, that would limit the amount of work I could do. And I don't want to work less. I want to be able to work and contribute to my life. So I'm not pursuing disability support, even though I qualify for it. But I work a job environment where my disabilities are actively triggered, and there's nothing I can do about it. I've already advocated for myself. There's nothing I can do about it, I was told. And so I'm doing the best that I can. But I need wages to go up if I'm going to survive. And I'm somebody who is working incredibly hard. I dedicate myself, I show up, I contribute. I'm doing everything I can. I've graduated university now. I've pursued my master's. I've been accepted to master's programs. Like, I'm trying, and I'm actively working really, really hard to be financially independent, but I need more help. And this affordable housing is amazing, but it's not enough. And that's just the reality. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. And I don't turn away any like jobs. I'm open to all kinds of jobs. I try to show up and register for all different types of skills development programs so that I can pursue a career that makes more money and all of these types of things. Like, I'm not closed off to anything like that. It's just that the reality is that it is very, very difficult. So yeah, that's my truth and my perspective that I think could be helpful. I'm not really sure where I'm going, like what this video is meant to do exactly, other than just provide information. But I guess it's just kind of how I spend my money as a low-income person and how money has been spent. So just information.